I'm ready.
So welcome back, everybody. This is Night Flight, and today Wayne Steiger is back. We wanted to do our second interview in April. That didn't quite happen. But here we
Yes.
are, and of course, our topic will be Baal. Yeah,
Mm.
who was that, and how does he fit into the big picture of all the deities that have been running around in our ancient texts for thousands of years?
Old
So,
dude.
Wayne, what brought you you did a series about Baal, but that was like 5 years ago. So, what sparked your interest into that subject?
Uh, it was really my decoupling from Christianity.
Ah,
And because, if you do the study and you look at the supposed genealogy back, you get to this. I don't know how to say it. It's either the Christian God or it's not, but Yahweh, which was the God worshiped by the 12 tribes of Israel, which is incorporated into the Old Testament. And it was during that study I came across a book. It's a rare book, and it's called The 12 Tribes of the Children of Israel and Their Tribal Customs. And it was a fascinating book. In fact, I'm looking at it, it's right over on my shelf. And it, for the first time, opened my eyes to outside what was taught to me in Bible school is the Old Testament of, the first Hebrew that later became the children of Israel, that later became the Israelites, and now the Jews. Um, it was during this time in their tribal nomadic settlement of this land of Canaan that you begin to find the story of the Canaanites, how it played its key central role in the pantheon of gods that the children of Israel worship. They a lot of people don't remember, but if you read the narrative, they were in Egypt for nearly 490 years. Well, anyone would know that if you came in as 12 brothers, and that's what it was, and from these 12 brothers, it grew into the supposed nation of these great slaves, that they were more Egyptian than they were anything else.
mhm.
And the thing that even gets stranger is that if you step back and you look at Jacob and his sons and you go back to Abraham, well, Abram, we know, came from Ur of the Chaldees, which was this core central kind of region, a state for the Sumerian Empire. Well, that led in me to understand who was Enki, Enlil, and Ea. So when I got to Yahweh, and it appears that Yahweh was the God, the deity that Abram met on Mount named this. Yes, thank you. It was very clear that this God was not like the gods Abram knew, because his family made trinkets and amulets for the moon goddess, which was basically she is Isis. I think that I may have that wrong, but anyway, so this God is a God that deals in blood. I mean, that's how Abram made his covenant with this God. So when you study who Yahweh is, you find out that there's a strange story about Yahweh because he has a brother named Baal. And apparently, Yahweh also had a wife called Anthroth, and he either murdered her or, cast her out. One of the two. It's depends on your point. But when you
Maybe,
study about, what was that?
maybe she did. Yes.
Yeah, exiled her probably, and that sounds like the story of Lilith, doesn't it? I mean, it's really weird. So when you find out about Baal, it's real interesting because the Canaanites, of who the Israelites were at war with, it was interesting because actually the Canaanites played a major role in influencing, again, the slaves that had come up into these different tribes, and they incorporated many of their customs and religions, and one of those was Baal worship. In fact, it's given reference in, I think, the book of Judges. I may be wrong on the exact, that where the priest of Baal goes up, and the prophet's carrying the donkey, and the donkey is talking to the priest, the prophet. And that was Baal. And the thing about Baal is that it appears that he's more powerful than Yahweh. And you go, okay, so then who is Yahweh? Well, if you study it, Yahweh is the God of war. Baal is the God of what we would call reconciliation, peace. Now, Baal worship goes back even as far as the Babylonians, in which, again, you have this people that came out of Egypt and then, started their whole nations, and then were led captive by the Babylonians, Nebuchadnezzar. And yet, as they traveled through this area, again, these same deities keep showing up. And of course, so that's a long answer for a very short question.
Yeah. So, can you give us an example where Baal was mightier than Yahweh?
Yeah, I believe it's in, I think, the book of Chronicles. It talks about the people of Yahweh, Jehovah, that they were in a battle again with the Canaanites, and the Canaanites were the Hittites, the Jebusites. There's just a lot of different relatives in this region. And it said that Yahweh could do no greater work and could not overcome the chariots of iron that the valley people had. And in fact, I'll even get real specific with you. If you read what Yahweh promised Abram, and that's what his name was before Abraham, he gave a defined region, which we called Canaan. Later became the area of Judea, which later, became Lebanon and that whole region. So if you go back and you look in the book of Genesis, he tells them exactly the region. Now, it's real interesting because if you read as I did as a Bible student, you find out that, wait a minute, something's really wrong here, because Yahweh, this God that created, heaven and earth, Adam and Eve, all this, apparently he has boundaries. And in fact, if you read the stories in the Old Testament, when, for instance, the Philistines stole the Ark of the Covenant, and they took the Ark of the Covenant back into Philistine, and then they put it in with the other gods that were worshipped by the Philistines. And of course, the story is the next day, those gods, those idols, were all laying face down to the Ark of the Covenant. And eventually the Ark of the Covenant brought such curses upon the Philistines that, they eventually sent it back in the ox cart with gold and everything else in it, saying, take this thing. So, but getting back to my point, Yahweh, Jehovah, cannot cross these ancient boundaries. For instance, if you look at the story, where was Yahweh when they were in Egypt? Now, we read the story of the supposed, Exodus, and it's real interesting because we have this deity, again, one-sided, Yahweh. we never find out the other side of the story, that there was this family, brothers. And it appears that Baal, in his region of his influence, was much greater than Yahweh. So, kind of again, and it's evident the whole Bible is with what? In this little tiny geographical area. And that this is part of the spell. Do you really think that this is how the world was evolved, from this little tiny area, that this so-called God was the God of all creation? No. Apparently, they didn't know about Yahweh in Egypt. Apparently, the Phoenicians. It's really the Phoenicians that supplied us the most understanding of Baal, because that's what the Phoenicians did. They dealt and traded in documents. So anyway.
Yeah, there is another aspect why this feud between the followers of Baal and Yahweh existed.
The follower of Yahweh's, yeah.
And that is actually a socio-economical reason, because the followers of Baal, they were selling, buying, and mortgaging land. And the followers of Yahweh, they were nomads. Their God said, do not mortgage the land is mine. And that was the underbelly, of this conflict between these two groups. And we know how the story goes, because these days, everybody is buying, selling land. Just go and try to build a house on a piece of land that you didn't buy. I mean, you can do that, and good luck with it. But
And it's interesting, because it gets even more interesting. So part of this whole period is that you also had, Moloch, that both the Canaanites and the Israelites apparently at one time were worshiping as well. And, when I think about this culture of where these gods today play a major role in our government, our laws. I mean, here in the United States, our laws were fashioned after the Ten Commandments. I mean, that's a hell of an influence for something that took place, 5,000 years ago, supposedly, and yet it's still influencing our very culture today. The advent of the internet, what it did, it let the genie out of the bottle, so to speak, because you and I can have a conversation now of a deity that was almost, erased, from the records. I think like Lilith was.
Yeah. So do you see this?
I see it.
Yeah, okay.
There he is.
It's a picture with a good size, because most of them are so small and crooked. Well, okay. When I looked at this, I thought it reminds me a little bit of Egypt, especially the headdress. Yeah. And then I thought, what in the world is this communist fist doing there? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the
Got it in a ball.
Yeah, and I thought, am I the only one who is seeing this? So I stumbled on this one. They are selling Public t-shirts, phone covers. Here's the phone cover. Stop the rebellion.
Look at
Return
that.
to Baal worship.
How
and then, but it is written very, very in very small letters. So I will briefly read it. Everyone is throwing this rebellion fist around these days, like it's cool. It's not. It's the fist of Baal, signifying return to Baal, Baal worship, denouncing God, giving into thy will, total evil. Let others know to stop this wickedness. Stop using this evil fist symbol. Stop denouncing the Lord, and so on and so forth. But when you look at the cover itself, here, stop rebellion, return to Baal worship, that is a little bit, yeah, you
It's
can miss.
interesting, in the 60s, that was the sign of, resistance,
Yeah.
And, the Olympics of 68, that was shown. It's interesting. I don't know who wrote this, but the question is, we get back to that duality, that it's either this God that no one can define for me. I ask people all the time, tell me the God that you worship. Please tell me define it. Well, it's unseen. I say, well, then please tell me where this God come from. And, most people's reference is typically the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
But even if I have a Muslim friend and they get their whole deity idea comes from the Quran. It's so weird, because these deities that today we assume is God, that this and that, Baal worship. And I'm thinking, wow. I mean, nothing that it is indeed a circle, isn't it? And here we're coming back to Baal worship. But isn't it interesting that Baal is blamed for this evil demiurge? It's like, oh man, I mean, it's just it's the worst. But yet, Judith, the thing that, excuse me, we got the watchdog, that it's the God that we put on our money, and God we trust. The God that the people that the world says is God is the God of war. I mean, I look at Baal as to an equation that I look also at Lucifer. I see that there's a lot of accusations thrown at these deities that this is the bad one, but what people will not or cannot defend is, then why does this being that that the world calls God, why is it permissible for that God to commit murder?
Mm.
I look at the rituals, and I cannot separate myself that the fact today that the Abrahamic belief systems, which uncover Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, is a blood religion. It's cost millions of innocent people their lives. But yet this is our definition of God. And so when I read something that is supposed to be so evil like Baal, I have to understand that these people, you brought out so well that the tribes were nomadic. The Canaanites, they had established this region for thousands of years. They have culture that, in fact, very much of the Sumerian culture was very much imprinted upon the Canaanite area in itself. And yeah, so anyway.
Yeah. When you talked about the covenant and that the Philistines stole, we have stories in the Bible where people who try to touch that, the word is missing, the Ark of the Covenant.
The Ark of the Covenant, yeah.
That they dropped dead right away. So my question was, how did the Philistines manage to steal it? Yeah.
Oh, well.
And yeah,
They had big chopsticks.
Yeah. So I asked Gary Wayne last time this question, and he said to me, it's pretty easy. They were not under the covenant.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting because, you go back and I remember again in my studies that the high priest, Aaron, he had the ephod, the 12 stones representing the 12. I still contend that ephod, and and if you read where actually how the high priest had to dress, underneath the outer garments is that he was wearing all silk underneath that. And it's real interesting that silk provides an electrical barrier as well. I contend that ephod was set in such a manner that it was an activator. And that's just my belief. I don't think that there was ever the physical God in there, but okay. So you go back to Moshe, which actually is magician. Moshe was a high priest in Pharaoh's courts. He would have been taught the quote unquote black arts. He would have been initiated.
Yeah, he was educated in Heliopolis. Yeah.
Yes. It is said that what Moses stole was the code, the document, that what him and it wasn't Phineas. I'm trying to think of who helped Moses in there, and the name escapes me, but it is said that when they were in the desert that they opened up this portal by using certain words in the Hebraic language, that it opened up this portal. And if you allow me to digress, it was interesting. We have a show here called Skinwalker Ranch on the History Channel. It's very interesting. Well, 2 seasons ago, they brought out a rabbi. And the rabbi said this Jewish prayer, and it opened a portal. And he said that the Hebrew rabbis, they've known about this for thousands of years. So it is said that it was through this thing that Moses did that brought in what we now know today as God. So it's very interesting, because if that is the case, then again, we framed our whole belief systems on information that's erroneous.
So there is a line of thought out there that El had 70 children, sons, and that Baal and Yahweh were among them. So what do you make of that?
Well, see, I know the 70. In fact, I have a friend that actually I have a huge meditation mat that has all 72 names of God in there. I absolutely do believe this. My belief is this, Judith, is that this thing that we call God is probably human, probably of a different variant of a DNA strand, but it is just as human as you and I. It has an ability of longevity of life. We know its character is more human-like, is more childlike than anything else. I mean, it claims that it's a jealous, vengeful God. I mean, if you're God, what do you got to be jealous of? And if you're God, a God of love, why do you have vengeance? What pissed you off? I mean, I was talking on my show with Trina. The thing that, I challenge here is this thought is that humanity has been a victim in this. I think we're dealing with beings that are not so much higher intelligence, is this that they understand the science. Because they certainly seem to have tempers. They certainly don't have any problem killing us. You step back and you're going, well, something's wrong here. That can't be the epitome of higher intelligence. And even in the discussion of Baal, isn't it interesting? What was it, back in 2011, I think, that they unearthed over in Iraq the Arch of Baal, and that arch went to every major power center in the Northern Hemisphere. Washington, D.C., London. It showed up there for an exhibit. Some believe that that was the reentrance of Yahweh's antithesis, because Baal had to have that art show up in the power structure of where power today is centered in our modern day culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's
but at the I get what you're saying. At the same time, I'm not a fan of Baal.
I'm not a fan of Yahweh.
I'm not a fan of a lot of all the deities.
I'm right there with you. In fact, I have said that so many times. I'm fed up with it. I don't really care if you're telling me that your God is perfect and that your God has this to say and your God has that. That's fine. That's your God. It's not mine. I've studied enough of the occult. I certainly studied enough of Christianity and a pretty good dose of Judaism on top of that to have a full understanding of this deity that I worshiped blindly. But I never did the background check, Judith. I never checked its credentials. And what I found myself coming out of was that I don't like any of them. Apparently, they're involved in an entanglement in a battle that predates us. I don't know how many, how long. I think humanity is a victim here. I mean, it's the question about evil. Is evil a presence? Is it a force? Or is it inherent to just what we are?
I think it's a force. I think it is very real.
As a force? Well, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So this idea.
So how would you define that force? It's interesting because I meditate on this a lot. So evil, how do we define evil? Well, we're in my meditations, as I look at it, I've been taught to define evil by a set of principles that represent a particular thought, a thought of a particular associated, tied to a deity. And so everything that I perceive as evil, I was meditating and was really deep in meditation, and this thought entered into my mind was that, is there something above good and evil? I mean, if you think that substance is the essence of what we create everything from, it's like electricity. Electricity is neither good nor bad. It just is. So it's that question of what is evil. I question that for myself. I question it a lot these days.
Yeah. Well, we have a universal law, do no harm.
And I think that is, it's the 7 principles of, yeah.
And so meaning enslaving people, lying to them and exploiting them, that to me falls all into the category of evil.
It's interesting, when I think about this and I think about, the antithesis of our belief systems, because good cannot necessarily exist if it doesn't have the antithesis of evil or bad. And I often question that as we look at ourselves. I mean, are we involved in a conflict that is of something that is supposed to be of a higher intelligence? And if it's a higher intelligence, and this is just, I'll share this with you. What I was writing down was that if this is a higher intelligence, then why can't they resolve their differences? I mean, we look at ourselves, we know that we're basically animals. I mean, that's what we are. We're in the animal kingdom. We're in the animal tree. And so we have an excuse. But I look at these gods, whether you want to talk about Jesus, whether you want to talk about El, you want to talk about Yahweh, you want to talk about whoever, Allah, I mean, I can just go through it. They seem to be flawed from the very beginning. They have conflict. I mean, if you're a perfect God, why would you have anyone that would be against you?
Mm.
It doesn't make sense. And if you're telling me that they're smarter, immortal, then it tells me something's wrong here, because it seems like we're stuck in time. I mean, this conflict never seems to end. And
Mm.
it's humanity who pays the price. We pay the price in our own blood. We
Yeah.
hurt each other, we enslave each other, and it seems to be the game here. It's like, well, we have elitism. There's a law for me and there's a law for you.
Mm.
That kind of logic means that then the universe is in chaos and is about to go completely kaboom. And so it comes back down to where we can't seem to figure it out. We can't seem, our religion has failed us. And that's why I walked away from Christianity. 2,000 years that this belief system has been around. But all during that time, I can't see a period of time, Judith, when man was ever an extended period of peace. It's always been war.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
See,
And
and
then, of course, you come into the realm of how do we even define God? What is that?
I've spent a lot of time in that. I don't believe in God in the sense of a personality or personification. I
Mm.
believe that there is this consciousness. It can't be defined, but it's a substance. It's again, it's a force, as you were talking about evil. But this force permeates everything. And I don't believe that it's positive or negative. I believe it's of a neutrality of its structure. And it imprints itself upon everything that is done in this realm. This realm is a magical realm. For there's creation that always takes place. And this is what confuses me about the whole thing that we fight over, is this thing about good and evil. It seems like we're being subservient to a set of gods that, unless there is this good and evil, they don't exist.
Mm.
So is there a higher consciousness? Is there the ability to rise above that? And I think that there may be, just me, but a whole new class of beings that are above this good versus evil, this duality.
Mm. Yeah, I think yes, there is a creative force, but I think we don't learn anything about the real creator in any of our religions.
I would I would say amen, sister. As we
Yeah, so I think that entire subject has been hijacked.
Yeah.
And we know, for instance, how things like that can go. Remember when in Stargate SG-1, people always thought they were gods because they came through the Stargate.
I was meditating one day outside and just really get it. And I had this presence that I felt. It called itself Jesus. And I said, well, I really have a problem with, the whole construct. And it was funny because I heard this voice come back and say, I was never meant to be a religion.
Mm.
And basically it was saying, that's not me. That's not what I represent. Never was. I said, okay, so what do you got to say? And then it was interesting because the whole message of what they have framed this reality about my own, it was about self-responsibility. It's about the ability of looking within and recognizing that within us all, we're uniquely created. There's only one of us. We've imprinted the universe with these physical bodies, and the spirits that dwell within them is what we find so fascinating, is that we got a chance in this realm. This is just me talking, but to inhabit these bodies, this bioengineering that is incredible. And we as beings, we can't be defined. But the interesting thing is that we restrict ourselves within these bodies, and this thing we call the brain, it occupies this generative energy that we provide it. It is said in some belief systems, Judith, that our consciousness hovers right about here, that it's never inside. It literally covers within it. And I think it's just quite fascinating when I take it and in that realm and remove myself from this idea of religion, this idea of God, this idea of a savior, this idea of a devil. I suddenly find myself in a realm that it's much more quieter, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So just for clarification,
we really got off on topic on that one.
This idea that El had 70 sons, that comes from a Ugarit text. It's called.
So where's the other 68?
Ras Shamra. And I tried to figure out all the names. I couldn't, because obviously there are only a couple really named. But the story goes like that. Athirat had these 70 sons, and she was the consort of Baal. So that is why they say, okay, Baal had 70 sons.
Isn't it interesting? So let's take that back even further. Then that means that there's a copulation of entities that, how long has this been going on? I mean, maybe it's just my mind when I hear that today, and I think, all right. And I got the whole thing of so where did the other 68 go? I mean, are the stories that we read of the Hindu beliefs, and their gods and their structure, it's quite fascinating.
They have thousands of gods.
Thousands. And wouldn't that make sense, though? But then I ask myself, well, where are they? Some say that we're nearing a time that where realities or realms begin to blend or mix together. Maybe we truly are in a simulation. Maybe we truly are nothing more than the thought of a higher being. Because I really, it's amazing. Someone wrote me who knew me 20 years ago. I mean, I was really a devout Christian, born again, spoke in tongues, the whole bit, laid hands on people. I mean, that's just the part of Christianity I came out of. And my whole reason for my association with the belief then was that I was tied to a powerful God. It wasn't God that there was just in a building and that you went through this moat thing of singing and then listening in and leaving. No, I wanted this active God. If God existed, then it had to be alive, it had to be powerful, and it had to have manifestation. And that's what I sought for all my life, still to this day. There was a period of time when I thought we were nearing that. I've witnessed the miracles. But as I look at it today, I realize that it probably wasn't a God that was doing the healing. It was us. I think that we as humans, Homo sapiens, we are the encapsulation of many versions of us, and that we have this remarkable ability. And that's why I was drawn to God. That's why I studied the Bible for 50 years and looking at it. And it was only through a set of blinders. I really was in love with this Hebrew God. I really thought that this Hebrew God existed. I thought that, as a Gentile, that I had the right and the ability to have a covenant relationship with this God. And as you and I talk, when you think about the key words that we're using here, covenants, belief systems, power. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of Baal, and every god and goddess goes the same way, and that is when blood sacrifices. Animal or human, I don't care. The moment you demand blood sacrifices or you are involved in that in any way, shape, or form, You're a deceiver. Yeah,
Here's
because
a wild thought, dear. Think about this. You see, one of my biggest regrets of Christianity was communion, because you are symbolically and metaphorically and in reality, you're partaking of a blood sacrifice.
Yeah.
What if we're already worshiping Baal? I mean, you
That's
think of
a very disturbing thought. Yeah.
I mean, you look at it around the world. When any type of a movement of a government or even of a church or a belief system, it always requires a blood sacrifice. Someone has to pay the price. And it still freaks me out. I mean, it really does. It's every time I think of that, all the times I took communion, I was partaking of this human murder. And I justified myself as it being holy. There's nothing holy about it at all. It's murder. And if that's what appeases this God, seriously? This is the God of love? And I can't have any, I've asked so many Christian theologians, but I said, well, tell me who the Father is. Because if you're claiming the Old Testament God as the background of your God of Christianity, and you're telling me it's called the Father now, there's no Hebrew, no Judaism, no writing in any Judaic writing of them ever calling Yahweh Father. So who is it? You know, and then I think about Paul and his writings. Paul's in the book of Acts. He's in Ephesus, and he's walking down the promenade, and he sees all the bust of all these different gods, and he comes into the amphitheater, and he says, you know, gentlemen, he said, you know, I saw all these gods that you had, and he said there was one that didn't have anything at all, and it said it was dedicated to the God who had no name. He says, that's the God that I worship. That's the God that I follow. And then I'm thinking to myself, whoa, wait a minute, Paul. Dude, you just said in your book of Romans how Jewish you were really Jewish. You said that this bridge between Abraham and the Gentiles was because of this Jewish God, this covenant grafted to the vine. Now you're telling me that through all your raising, you know the 72 names of God. You know who the El Shaddai is. You know who Jehovah Jireh is. Now you're writing and you're telling the world that you worship the God that has no name. Who's this God? Think about that. And the world today is mostly Christianized. And it's within the Christianized world that we always have war and conflict. We don't have peace.
No.
So are we already worshiping Baal? I mean, are we did Paul bring in something that, you know, because the Catholic Church, you know, it has the prayer to Lucifer.
Yeah.
It says, Lucifer, who says that Jesus, thy son? I mean.
Yeah, that is, they said that prayer when the Pope died. I remember
Yes,
that.
they did. You know, I'm going, Are you all right?
Yeah, my cat really scratched me so hard.
That had to hurt. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Do you need to take care of that?
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's just a tiny little bit of blood, but nothing.
The blood sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
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 But you know, listen, we're having a discussion that is so taboo. I mean, this is so sacrilegious. But something's wrong here, and it's not just me. I've been saying it on my channel for years. Something is wrong here. This thing that we worship, it can't be what we're being told. We're being allured into this trap that says it's all about love and unity, but the whole thing is all about dividing.
Yeah. And there is another thing, Baal and the temple prostitutes.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I know people call it sacred prostitution. I have to say, I'm not a fan of, slapping the word sacred in front of any noun that you like to make it sound special. And like sacred geometry. Who the fuck told you that? What is it that makes it sacred? It's geometry. Get over it. Everybody is using these terms, but nobody can tell me what exactly is sacred about it. Or sacred prostitution. Prostitution is prostitution, be it in a temple or be it in a whorehouse. Yeah, it is still a financial transaction.
Yeah, it's more than that. It's an energy transfer too.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So,
Well, I mean, the Old Testament, if you read in the patriarchs, I mean, they were a bunch of horny bastards. I mean, they were constantly courting everywhere. And in fact, that's what really the primary thing about the most of the story is the sexual encounters. It's weird. And then you got Solomon. I mean, I don't know how that dude had time for anything. I mean, the 300 wives and 700 concubines, of which, by the way, the Shira poles that his concubines, started erecting all through Judea, were to Anthroth and to Baal. And it said even in time that Solomon worshiped Baal. So I wonder what the wisest man supposedly on the planet, what did he know? What was so lacking that he had to go to the extreme over into Baal worship? Judith, I can't have anyone answer me a question. Why does God want worshipers?
Yeah, that's exactly, because actually when I think about it and when I feel into that subject, I have to say, if you are really the source of everything that ever was, will be, and is, what in the world can a little carbon entity do to you? And I mean, come on. That is insane. How can this little carbon entity really insult you? That's ridiculous.
And I'll make a confession here. I can remember, particularly in the latter years, when I was leaving the religion, even in inside of me, your soul, you're departing, And I would sit there and seeing people holding their hands up in just worship and tears coming down. And here I am in the midst of all this, and I'm going, who am I actually talking to? And it's yeah, and I was really heavily involved with the national ministries here at one time. And you know what I found in every one of these mega churches? Adultery.
Yeah.
Someone on the pastoral staff was having sex with somebody else's husband or somebody else's wife. And I found that in virtually every church I ever visited and seen it, when it's just weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's something it puzzles me.
Yeah, that is always a subject. Lately I have looked a little bit deeper into the entire Waco story, because
David Koresh.
30 days, yeah. And even there, and that is, even there, he dissolved the marriages and had sex with their wives, and they were no longer allowed to have sex with their legal wives, because
Always sex.
It's always that's what
Always
it
sex.
always boils down to. Isn't that
It's so
incredible?
freaking true. I mean, I grew up as a hippie. I'm still a hippie. And I lived on a couple of communes and in New Mexico. And, nudity, it wasn't even thought about. I mean, it was just part of the culture. And it wasn't to the belief of an individual or having someone bang someone else. It wasn't like that. But it was always interesting when I got into these religious things that sex was the big motivator.
Mm.
Yeah, it's weird. And again, the whole story of, you even look at Christ, the story of Christ, he had all these women following him, and it's weird. It's the story of
Yeah.
Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I,
David Koresh, that was, I know exactly where I was at when that event happened with Janet Reno when she gave the order.
yeah. And funny enough, it was during the season of sacrifice, 19th of April. Yeah. And so
You see,
there is a connection to this
yes,
very weird antediluvian belief system that you have to plenish the earth with blood to have a good harvest, and that everything will go well, what you want to do this year. And I don't think that, probably not from the get-go, but as it developed, I think somewhere the decision was made that will be the sacrifice.
there is a belief here that when this thing happened here in the United States on January 6th, that most people don't know that the House of Representatives is actually a temple. It was built after a temple. It's what Jefferson's whole point was. And it was said that there was an exchange of power, or power was given, but it required a blood sacrifice that had to be made in the forum of before you entered into the temple. There was a person who was shot to death right in there, and that was a blood sacrifice. I mean, this stuff is real. I mean, this is the one thing about occultism, because I had 50 years of initiation through Christianity. One thing I knew about Christianity in my Bible studies is that the Old Testament God was a God of blood. It required blood. It required the blood sacrifice. And whether it was bulls, cows, birds, or humans, it was the blood sacrifice. And it's even said that this God loved the smell of burnt flesh.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, they pulled the wool over our eyes with these violent religions for thousands of
Yes.
years.
And the most bloodiest of them all is Christianity. I find people today, because they challenge me, and I keep telling them, you want to deny the foundation of what you've built your temple, your church on, is the fact that you've built it on the blood of those who were innocent. I mean, when the Spaniards come in here with Catholicism, people say, well, I'm not a Catholic. Doesn't matter. It's where you got your God from, your Jesus from. And you know what they did to the natives over there? Well, besides what they did to the women, they would hang the children right above it, literally about an inch above the stones, that they would heat to the point where it was crazy. And what we did to the Native Americans here in the name of Jesus, we slaughtered a whole nation of people and forced them into a belief system. And you see, that's the day we're the descendants of that forced belief system. And you know what I'm finding out, Judith? It isn't what we told. There's no peace, love, dove here. Now, this is apparently a religion that's so indoctrinated us that we think we have to go to war, whether it's economically, but we're all humans, but yet we'll have one nation who will deny the necessities of life to another nation because of a religious or political idea. but we're the only ones spilling the blood.
Yeah. And their Christianity has a very bad rap sheet.
Oh, yeah. And you know, listen, anything in the Abrahamic covenant beliefs, but as someone pointed me out, a person who is of the Hindu belief, he says, Wayne, you're right about something. He says it's the humans. He says our religion is filled with the blood of humans.
Mm.
Now, he did point out that there was something that was a little different than the Hindu belief systems. That is, the gods died too.
Mm.
Mm. Like,
And
okay, well,
so
gee.
how, now I'm confused. How do they make sure who of their gods is still,
Yeah,
alive and kicking? And if not, then it would not make any sense to worship them. I mean, worship is to me a very weird concept.
it's the Sumerian tablets, when they bring out the story of Enki, Enlil, Niasahog, the other pantheon of the Sumerian belief systems, you know, I keep saying, why is it that you don't see Yahweh here in the Sumerian pantheon? Why is it that I don't see any Muslim god or any, Indie god? It's weird, because if this was the first culture that was able to write, then it tells me everything after this has been made up. If
Yeah,
Yahweh exists,
that there is a gap because we had the collapse of the Bronze Age,
yes,
and that was, I would say a highly developed civilization, and they had a lot of trade routes via ships. It started in Greece, and then on the other side of the Mediterranean, then what we call today Turkey, Mesopotamia, and they were always in contact with each other and traded. And that collapse of the Bronze Age then led to the fact that even for a couple of 100 years, people forgot how to read and write.
yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and it's kind of like what we also saw in the Dark Ages.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that repeated again about the 1100s. There was this collapse.
Yeah.
And it's where I find myself today. Been on this planet a little while, and I look at this, and because as you get older, you reflect back on your life, and you begin to examine, well, what did I sacrifice my youth to? My whole belief systems that fashioned my thought, my lives, culturally, and everything else. And what I've come to find out is that it was a grand illusion. I was the one that made it real. And when
Yeah.
you begin to find out where the story truly leads to, I've told people before, it's a decompression area. You end up in the void because you realize that, these gods that we've believed in and that, people sacrifice their lives to, they're not who they say they are.
Yeah. But what you just said, I think there is a lot of Baal worship here already. For instance, we are, for the most part, people are willing to sacrifice their, especially their sons, to any war god. Yeah, if this politician says now you are going to war, yeah, and it's sending all the little soldiers out, yeah, we are willing to accept that because usually we might think that this politician is, yeah, better and to be preferred over the other. I mean, which is so
We
ridiculous.
have a president that is hell bent on sacrificing humans.
Yeah,
And I got to ask myself, who's driving this? Because to me, this is evil. It's unnecessary, doesn't need to happen, should never happen. but yet it seems like everyone's focusing in the power structure to make it happen. That's evil to me. I don't know why another human would ever contemplate that. Why can't we contemplate peace? Why can't we find prosperity and the ability to share the resources of this planet? No one owns it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
But yeah.
saddens me, Judy. That's what it does. It saddens me because it's like I can't find any message of love, any message of hope today. There's no unifying message out there. It's all division.
Mm.
And if this is a higher power, I don't understand it. If this is higher intelligence, wow. And if it's not, then what the hell are we doing? Is this the pinnacle of our brilliance? Is self-annihilation? Blame it on the gods, It's easier that way.
Yeah.
It's Baal worship, damn it. That's what it is, Steiger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That is it. And it continues. Then, okay, you get pregnant and it is inconvenient. You go to the temple of abortion. Yeah. And again, another life annihilated. And people act as if it's pulling a tooth.
Wow. That's where we're so deceived. If they do a history of Moloch, Moloch was about abortion. But you know who the true God of abortion is? The God of the Bible. It was Yahweh, Jehovah, that instructed Caleb and Joshua when they went in, particularly to the Jebusites, that God instructed them to cut the fetuses out of the pregnant women and then bash the skulls of the fetuses against the stone.
Yeah.
That's abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the God of the Bible? This is the Father God? No. Something's messed up. I mean, I'm just going, wait a minute, time out. Wait a minute. So you got this God, and now you're telling me they got the Jew on the stick here, and that this is going to be my answer to salvation. What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pardon me.
Yeah, no, I can, actually, when I know we have been conditioned to think that it has always been that way as long as I can think. Yeah. So Old Testament, New Testament. I wonder if these two books even belong together.
They do not. And it's interesting you say that, because the Vatican, this Pope right now, who is the Black Pope, he is the anti-Pope, they're actually talking about convening the cardinals, having, what is it, the council, to separate, because the jig is up. You got people like you and I talking about and going, now, wait a minute. You can't have this God that is this bloody, murderous maniac telling me now all of a sudden I'm hearing angels, and the little harp and the little, flute thing, and oh, hail Jesus. And, didn't Jesus say, though, in the book of Matthew, I did not come to bring peace, but to bring division and to bring war, to separate mother and father? Yeah. Something's up, man. That's something right. That's all I'm going to tell you. And I know I don't know how long you want to go on this, but it comes back to this. Wait a minute, this can't be the God of peace and love. We must be worshiping the God of war. So who are we really worshiping here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there you can say, yeah, you will, well, how can I paraphrase that? Their fruits would tell you who they are. Something.
Yes. You can judge them by the fruit that they bear. Yeah.
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 And these fruits are actually not really good. They're not really convincing.
I can't see anywhere on earth where this conflict hasn't been ever present. And you think about it, for the first 1,000 years of the New Age, supposedly was ruled primarily, the Western world was by the church.
Mm.
And that influenced how it completely eradicated. As I tell people all the time, the Christian church is a pagan church. It killed the pagans and took their religion. It killed my ancestors. And today we can't find peace. We can't find anything to unify us. I mean, I was one time really involved in politics. Hell, I found out that not only did I have this religion that had everything with this, you get involved with politics. I mean, now that's black magic. Religion and politics. You want to talk about occultism? There it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly. And to me, it appears that all these gods that we read about in whatever text, there is, there is interaction. There is. I don't think it is all just fantasy and made up.
Mm.
So that means there was probably a being or many beings running around, 2 legs, 2 arms, a head, speaking, eating. Yeah, the angels ate with Sarah slaughtered the what was it? Was it the bull or whatever when the angels came to visit? Yeah, what do you mean the angels sat down and ate with you? For for that you
Apparently,
need,
they were identifiable enough that people wanted to
yeah,
have sex with them.
yeah,
That's a weird one down there. It's like, oh, angels, huh? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, some people say that the story is backwards. That actually the people wanted to get them out of the city because they brought always a lot of yeah, evil deeds and diseases and yeah, death and destruction, and that is why they wanted to have them out of the city. But what was reported to us was that they were the evildoers, and they wanted to have sex with the angels. So I don't know, I wasn't there.
Nor was I, but there could be another spin to this story, is that, you know, if you look at the ET abductions, that these angels intervening in here, taking humans up. We have the story of Enoch and we have Elijah. Well, these are set into a context of cultural descriptions, but these are obviously abductions any way you look at it. And my thing of Sodom and Gomorrah was that they used a technology that I think once they took the people, we got the story of supposed God raining down fire, but we know that it was more akin to what we would call today would be close to a laser hitting the whole region. And I'm thinking to myself, I think we've been at war with ET. I know this may be tied to the whole subject of Baal, but I'm convinced, Judith, that within probably the next year or so, the world is going to be told that ETs exist, that aliens are here, and that they're among us, and it's going to be
Have been for
interesting.
thousands of years.
Exactly, and that's what I think, that these angels, these demons. I mean, if they're a creation of our thoughts, then holy shit, then that means we're all by ourselves, and I don't think we are. I don't think we've ever been by ourselves. That's just me.
Quite a while ago, you had somebody on your show with Trina who said he thinks he is now convinced that we are completely alone and that there is no such thing as extraterrestrials. And I thought, oh, that thought is so disturbing. I mean, think about that. Let's entertain the idea. We are really alone. There is no life out there whatsoever. First of all, it doesn't make sense to me because that would be just, a huge waste of space. But okay. So now that would mean that all hopes hang and hinge on us, on this stupid species, or that is terrifying.
Yeah, so and there, by the way, I mean, there were Hawkins, he believed that. Carl Sagan, he believed that. He believed that we were just as he said, a random event, mistake that hasn't been repeated. I don't believe that. I know there's no evidence that says to the counter, but I believe that we cannot be out there by ourselves. And I believe that the human that we call today sapiens, that the gap in history, we don't know our beginnings. I mean, I ask people all the time, explain the RH factor. We have the rhesus hemoglobin in our blood. It's there. It's passed on, which means at some point in time, there had to have been some sort of mating of the DNA factor that would make that even possible. That tells me genetic manipulation.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
that's what I'm more convinced. I believe that there was an advanced race of beings. That's what they do.
Yeah.
They literally go ahead, hon.
And I think that, there is the story, about the Patal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
the story goes that their chief geneticist was called Yahweh. I just put it out there. Nobody has to believe it. Yeah.
And why wouldn't they make them gods? I mean,
so anyway, I'm sure that somebody tampered with our DNA 100%. Yeah. And then here comes the next step. What do you do to manipulate them permanently?
well, obviously you're going to put it into the code.
There is one thing that happened. They gave them agriculture. Because nomads, they are always running around. They are not long enough, to really brainwash them. But make them stay in one particular point. They are tied down to the land. They have to take care of the crop. They have to plant. And yes, I know agriculture also had a lot of benefits. I'm not disputing that. But that is the easiest way to have them at one location. And then once they settle down and they start building settlements, then you can.
Isn't that the story of Adam and Eve? Adam was a gardener.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a tiller of the land. Often said that we're really here nothing more than cheap labor. Then we started multiplying. I love the Apocrypha, the Apocalypse of Adam, and in there is the story of how, apparently when they were outside the garden, when Adam were in the cave of treasures, that he didn't know how to have sex with Eve. And it was Lucifer that had to come and teach them, about it. And Adam said, well, why would I want to have sex with myself? And that's how the story goes. That
in which book is that? Can you recall?
it's the Apocalypse of Adam. It's in the Apocrypha.
Apocalypse of Adam. Okay.
Read the story. It's a fascinating story.
Is that still available?
Yes, yeah. In fact, that's where we find that Adam and Eve committed suicide. Adam committed suicide 13 times. I think Eve did it 12 thereabouts. But they could never die. They always came back. And they didn't know how to eat. They didn't know. In fact, the first time they ate the food outside the garden, it gave them terrible stomach pains, and then they were both in pain for days. Very interesting story what those first years were for these two beings coming out of this protection environment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have
very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any final words?
Well, I'm telling you, it's an amazing journey, Judith. I never get tired of it. It's Paul wrote, he said, when I was a child, I thought as a child, and as I'm a man, I think as a man. But I am finding out that being more childlike as a man is really allowing me to see much more of a story that emerges that as an adult, I would not have had the ability to see. And it's not, what I'm finding out is it's quite interesting why we're here. And, and I don't believe that those who created us ever thought about death. I really don't think that they gave death any thought at all. And it's one of those things that I just don't think that it was in the thing. And then we, because of the genetic manipulation, we should have been able to live at least 10,000 years. Our bodies are designed to do that. They're designed not to die. They're designed to replicate, to rebuild themselves. But someone came in and set the meter to less than 100 years, and our IQ. If we've been on this planet for 10,000 years, let's just say, well, if we started out with an IQ of 100, and if even with an IQ of 1, within 10,000 years, we all should be freaking geniuses, but we're not. We're regressing. That tells me the manipulation. That tells me that we're more likely the experiment of a program that no one knew how it was going to turn out. And I think that probably one of the safety protocols in that experiment would be, if it didn't turn out, that these bodies themselves would disintegrate. Because we're certainly not living 100 years now. We're certainly not living. Look what we've done already with now post-COVID. We're now into taking the petroleum out of our medicine, and now we're moving into genetics. And I don't care what anyone says, we're not ready for this. No. You start messing with the genetics, who knows what's going to happen in 100 years. I don't think they'll be like you and I. So there's my final thought. And what if it is about all this? What if it is this Baal character or whatever? Wouldn't they be master geneticists? Wouldn't they understand this? They're gods.
Yes, so they say.
So they say. And I can tell you, isn't it the thing you cross over and man, you're ready to meet God, and there's no one in here. There's no one in the room. I don't know.
So why do you think it is so hard for people to question their belief system?
Fear.
Is fear of death? Yeah, would you say? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. People have challenged me. They said, well, what are you going to do when you die? I said, well, I can't fight it. I don't think, I may have been more afraid of my birth than I'm afraid of my death, because I know that the birth was going to be a one-way ticket, and it had to be excruciating pain, so much so that we don't remember it. So I find death to be the opposite of that, that if this entry was so painful, that's going to be orgasmic going out.
Yeah. I'm not going to fight it either, because that's a fight.
You know what I'm gonna do, like Don Knotts. I'm gonna laugh my way out. I love this. This has been an adventure of a lifetime. I've loved it. It has had its ups and downs, but what an experience. And you know what? I'm glad I paid for the ticket. It's cool. It's the amusement park of a lifetime.
Hmm.
And that's the hope that I have, Judith. If we were in something in our discussion, because it's dark, the subject in itself is just dark, and it's painful to talk about it. But I believe that there's another aspect that I'm really, maybe this is the proving ground for the gods and goddesses. Maybe this is where we come to become disciplined in our emotions and be able to control those emotions so that the next phase, when we transcend to the other side, that we continue our development and continued our advancement. I don't think we're coming back here. The universe is too broad. The multi-realms of many dimensions, I think we're needed in other places.
Yeah, I do not intend to come back here.
I'm right there with you.
Last round.
Exactly. Had enough of it, man. Let's move on.
Yeah, exactly. Because the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Isn't that the book of Ecclesiastics? There's nothing new under the sun. That which was shall yet be again.
Yeah.
So that tells me that we're in a cycle, and I want to get the hell out of here. I'm tired of this. It's been great, but I don't want to come back. Be candid with you. I thought my adolescence sucked. You know, no, no. I'm ready to be free, as they would say. I'm ready to go commando.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this has been fun, Judith. This is always a delight. I have to have you back over on my show, the live show.
Yeah, just tell me when.
All right. I have to have you on with Trina and I. That would be a fun show.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have Trina on next week.
All right. Well, that'd be perfect. We'll have to get a time and coordinate it and have you on.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm all for that.
So, okay, that was it. Night flight for today.
Well, I enjoyed it. Thank you, Judith.
Okay. We see you on next time. Until then, stay safe and sound. Bye-bye.